Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sarah Little. I'm Director of Business Development for ASTA and NACTA, and I will be the organizer for today's presentation. We are happy to welcome today's presenter, Kathy Hedges, Marketing Coordinator at Northern Alaska Tour Company. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few important features on your screen that will allow you to interact with us via the web. We will be answering your questions at the end of the presentation. To ask a question, you will use your GoToWebinar pane. Near the bottom of this pane is an area that says Questions. If you click on the arrow next to where it says Questions, it will open up a new window pane. This is what you will use to communicate with us. If you are having trouble hearing the presentation, please make sure that your speakers are turned on and all the way up. If you called in, try hanging up and dialing back in again. You can send me any technical issue via the Questions pane, and I will try to answer them. Please note that all audience members are muted. We certainly want to hear from you, but we have so many people on the call that the background noise would be prohibitive, and we want to ensure that everyone can hear the entire presentation. Finally, please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available for your on-demand viewing via YouTube by early next week. Now let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce Kathy Hedges.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and welcome everybody to today's topic. So it is discovering Alaska's Arctic and why Alaska's Arctic is a premier Aurora destination, but I thought I'll spend just a quick moment on who we are, so you even know who's talking about Alaska's Arctic, and then kind of get right into it. And the company I work with is Northern Alaska Tour Company, and we're based here in Fairbanks, Alaska, and like it says, we're sharing Alaska's Arctic with the world since 1987. This picture is probably something that I get a kick out of a little bit more than you, as these friends started this tour company right out of high school, and it was in 1986 that they graduated from a local high school right here. So talk about a local tour company, that's who we are. And it was that first summer they went on to summer jobs after graduating from high school, some of it in the visitor industry. And during that time frame, the Trans-Alaska Pipeline was new, the oil was flowing, and there was this highway called the Dalton Highway. Nobody provided a tour experience up there. So this pioneering group of friends, just like the pioneering spirit of Alaska, got together, bought a van, and for the next few summers, did a tour called the Arctic Circle Drive Adventure, sharing that one very specific region with visitors. Well, from there, they graduated, and some went on to their respective career that they went to school with. But jumping ahead, not giving you the full history of every single tour, we now really opened up Alaska's Arctic. And when we talk about sharing, that's exactly what we try to do in all of the different tour experiences. It's not just getting you from point A to point B, but depending on if it's going out to one of the Alaska Native communities, if it's getting to the shores of the Arctic Ocean, it's really bringing you, the visitor, along with us and having a better appreciation and understanding for the region, for that village, for the geography that's out there. And who am I? As Sarah mentioned, my name is Kathy, and I'm here with Northern Alaska Tour Company, and I have been with this company since 2000, so definitely a good chunk of my time. But I'm also a lifelong Alaskan from Juneau. So later on, if you have questions about the rest of the state, or I've got my email later, definitely open for questions about that. So here's the state of Alaska, and just to give you a perspective of where we are located is right here in Fairbanks, in the heart of the state. And when we talk about Alaska's Arctic, yes, it's this line right here, the Arctic Circle. But for the most part, with a lot of our tours, it's really anything north of Fairbanks. Places I'll talk about during this presentation is absolutely the Dalton Highway. So this one lone road, that's the Dalton Highway. Getting ourselves to the Yukon River, this river that cuts the state in half. Getting up to communities like Coldfoot in the Brooks Mountain Range, Onuktivik Pass and the gates of the Arctic National Park, or going as far north as Barrow, which did change its name this past year. It's actually Utqiagvik, but Barrow, and still found on money maps, is the northernmost community in Alaska. But we'll also be talking about Deadhorse in Prudhoe Bay, along with the native community of Fort Yukon on the Yukon River. But later on, I'll also talk about some tours that go down to Denali National Park. So that gives you a general idea of where we're talking about. And I'll also be spattering in a few facts. So here is the state of Alaska, and I want to share with you that in the summer of 2016, Alaska had 1.8 million visitors to our state. Of those visitors, fewer than 2% actually came north of the Arctic Circle. So less than 2%. That's not only with our adventures, but that's other guests that have traveled on their own. So pretty strong bragging rights if you've got guests that want to cross the Arctic Circle to go back to their friends and tell them what they did. Something else I want to share with you is that today is Seward's Day. So happy Seward's Day here from the state of Alaska on March 26th. It is the day that there was a signing of the Alaska Purchase in 1867. So now you're a little bit wiser of what took place. Now try to choose a tour experience for your clients. There's not just one that fits everybody. We're a big state. Alaska's Arctic is a big region. So when we have a conversation with a guest, it is going through trying to find out more of what is it that they're interested in. Is it strictly just getting across the Arctic Circle? Is it that they want to go into one of the Alaska Native communities that has invited us to come in? Are they trying to see something in the winter time? Are they trying to see something in the fall? You'll notice here we've got a small plane. Some guests love that idea of getting onto a 9-passenger plane. Others say, no, thank you. Put me in something on a ground tour. Keep me on the ground. Or do a combination of both. We do operate adventures year-round, so that should not stop anybody from coming to Alaska if their vacation time is in October, November, or yes, in the middle of the summer in June, because we do have something in Alaska's Arctic year-round. It's just a matter of having that conversation with them of what they're interested. So starting out with, we have a series of adventures that are what I'd call your basic Arctic Circle adventures. Arctic Circle Drive Adventure, Arctic Circle Fly Drive Adventure, Arctic Circle Air Adventure. We also have an Arctic Circle Overnight. All of these adventures are going to get the guests across the Arctic Circle. Again, that is sometimes the main draw for somebody, but it's going to have a chance for them to get out and hear and learn about the region. Of course, what's going to really make their day is everyone on any of our Arctic Circle experiences that cross the Arctic Circle, they're going to walk away with an official Arctic Circle certificate saying that they survived that journey into the wilderness. Outside of just crossing the Arctic Circle, it is an understanding what's out there. For many guests ahead of time, they're thinking, well, there's nothing out there. Why would I go? Well, it's because looking at this vast openness, this is the Finger Mountain, just looking into the Arctic Circle is actually right there in those mountains to the north, but they're going to find out how, why do people live up there? We do not guarantee wildlife into Alaska's Arctic, and no tour does, I don't think, because look at all that area that any animals have to roam, but our guides are absolutely going to share with guests what does live out there. So here in Alaska's Arctic, there's moose, there's caribou, Arctic fox, ptarmigan, and that's just part of the story, depending on how long a guest is with us. So finding out what they want to do, how long they want to be, any journey along the Dalton Highway, they're going to have that story and learning about this region. Now with this photo, I'd like to try to tell a little bit about the timing. There is some snow on the ground. This picture was actually taken in early fall. So this picture was probably taken somewhere in early September, just to give you an idea. In the middle of the summer, the Arctic is free of snow. Believe it or not, we've got 24-hour daylight, and so that snow actually goes away. Giving you again some of the pictures, it's really important of sharing with a guest is that when they're traveling out in Alaska's Arctic, they're going to have a chance to get up close and personal. So here's a guest reaching into the dirt, kind of from the outside perspective, you're kind of wondering what's going on, but a lot of the land north of Fairbanks is what we call discontinuous permafrost. That means there's a lot of sections where just below the surface, just where that guest is reaching, there's actually frozen ground. So while there's delicate vegetation above the ground, they're actually feeling the ice just beneath it. And their guide is there sharing, talking with them about it. Again, I'm showing you with a couple of pictures of transportation to get an idea of what a guest could be into. They could definitely fly by small plane. Everybody having a window seat, having a chance to look out. On the ground tour, they're going to have a 25-passenger coach. I also like to share, just because we're a rugged region, your guests are not roughing it. Your guests are able to, if they come to you and say they want to cross the Arctic Circle, it is a soft adventure that they're getting into. There is no need to carry their backpack. There's no need to give up having indoor accommodations for them, but they are going out into a region that is rugged in itself. So that is what's taking place there. So you've got your basic Arctic Circle, and these Arctic Circle adventures take place year-round. So if a guest wants to get out on Arctic Circle winter drive, they can do that right now. We've got snow on the ground, and they're able to go out and experience Alaska's Arctic in the wintertime. Safe and sound to do it. They can also fly and do an Arctic Circle air adventure in the wintertime. But I showed you that Dalton Highway. A guest is able to get out into Alaska's Arctic and get all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. So here's two methods that if a guest comes to you and realizes that they're only seeing half the state, they want to see the rest of it, then take a look at getting them up to the Arctic Ocean. The Arctic Ocean adventure, the more red rat card, that gives them a chance to cover the full length of the Dalton Highway. Now they're not only getting to just where the Arctic Circle is, they're going to get out through the whole Brooks Mountain Range, get out into the Arctic coastal plain, get out to the actual shores of the Arctic Ocean where they can dip their hand into the water. Utqiagvik, Barrow, is another place they can go and get their chance to see the Arctic Ocean and have an opportunity to be into one of the Alaska Native communities. This is going to be Inupiaq Eskimo community at Barrow. So again, both of them are going to get a chance to get to the Arctic Ocean. And again, soft adventure. They're going to be flying up there safe and sound and having vehicles. The population in Utqiagvik is 4,000. So definitely they're not leaving civilization too far behind. Now here, you're going to see the snow here. This is Utqiagvik. Both of them actually are Barrow. This picture here with the woman putting her finger in, that's probably taken at I would say the first week or two of June. So yes, slowly the snow walks away. Kind of a fun fact, if you have guests that travel with us in May and they go up to either Dead Horse on the Arctic Ocean adventure or June, they can actually stand on the Arctic Ocean because the Arctic Ocean does freeze all the way to the shoreline. This picture here, which is of Utqiagvik, these are upside down kayaks. I can see the snow and the ice in the far, far distance. This picture here was taken in July. So definitely snow-free ground at the top of the world in Utqiagvik. But again, a chance for your guests to really get out and enjoy it. I shared with you Alaska Native communities that have opened their doors to visitors and have invited us in. Alaska does have communities where guests have a chance to get out and experience the Native culture close up. We have actually 3 communities. We have Fort Yukon, that is a Gwich'in Athabascan community. We have Anaktuvik Pass, that is a Nunavut Eskimo community. We also have a third one that's not here, Beaver, that is open for us to visit in a quick day trip. And this is a chance for guests to get out. The local host is with the guests, talking and sharing with them about their community. And guests can find out more about their culture, more about how their culture is in modern society, because all these communities you see here in Fort Yukon, the tour is done by bus. So again, there's modern community, but it's their rich culture that the local host is going to share with our visitors. And so that's important for a lot of guests to do. But wait, there's more. As I mentioned, we also go to the south. Granted, it's not considered part of the Arctic, but I wanted to share with you how easy accessible it is from Fairbanks, the point that you're going to have guests come into. In the summertime, there is a Denali Summit flight. This is a chance for guests to get up to the summit of Denali, 20,000 foot level, and have an eye level view right there with the summit of the mountain. Out of Fairbanks, we've got our Denali adventure, which is a 45-minute flight from Fairbanks to the mountain, taking a look at the mountain and the glaciers around Denali National Park. But wait, there's more. There is a Denali winter drive adventure. I share that one here as well because many visitors to Alaska think that we're only open May through September, and that's definitely not the case. Alaska's Arctic is open year-round, and so is actually Denali National Park. The National Park is open year-round. A lot of the services you might be familiar with any tours that you've sold to Alaska, a lot of the services right there by the canyon do close during the winter months. And with the Denali Park Road that goes into Denali National Park, they do only maintain that for the first 3 miles. What we offer visitors in the wintertime is a ground tour from Fairbanks south to Denali, talking about the Tanana Valley, the communities along the way, and then making it into the park to the Murray Science Center. And that's the center right down here in the bottom that visitors are able to go into. And as you can see, a lot of displays of the animals, the wildlife that are there in Denali National Park. The train ride here associated with it is, in the wintertime, we have joined up with Alaska Railroad, so your visitors can get down to Denali National Park safe and sound. They don't need to rent a car to drive around in the winter. We'll take care of the driving for them in the ground tour from Fairbanks to Denali National Park. Have a guide with them to talk to them about the park, about the wildlife, the displays that are there at the Murray Center. They can choose to come back with us by ground, or on days that the Alaska Railroad runs, they can actually hop on board the Alaska Railroad and take the 4-hour trip back to Fairbanks and having a leisurely train ride back to Fairbanks. The top pictures here that I'm showing with is the Denali Summit flight. Just giving you a perspective how there is a window, so everyone has that window view. Headsets, so they can hear the pilot. They can also talk to the pilot in the headset, and then the plane in front of Mount Denali. So having a chance to experience and see that. For the next couple of slides, I just have some of the pictures, kind of having fun. But I want to share with you, again, of how to share Alaska's Arctic with your visitors. Definitely Fairbanks is where you want to have them fly in and out of, or take the train to. So if you weren't aware of, Alaska Airlines is the main airline that flies in and out of Fairbanks with daily service and direct service from Seattle, 3 flights during the wintertime, and right now the schedule is going up to 4 come the summertime. We also do get summer service with Delta Airlines from Minneapolis and Seattle. So that's with Delta Airlines during the summertime. And we have multiple flights daily from Anchorage. So if your guests have come in, say on one of the cruise ships coming into Alaska, and either on their own or perhaps they're with one of the land packages, you are able to get from Anchorage to Fairbanks in an easy 1-hour flight with Alaska Airlines or with Raven, R-A-V-N, Raven Airlines, and that's again out of Anchorage. Or, as I mentioned earlier, the Alaska Railroad is an option for some guests. That does run daily during the summertime, Anchorage to Fairbanks. Also runs, of course, Fairbanks back to Anchorage daily in the summertime, or in the wintertime, every Saturday, Fairbanks to Anchorage, and Sunday, Fairbanks back to Anchorage. So definitely making Fairbanks very accessible for your guests. Other highlights here I just want to kind of point out to you. Here, of course, is celebrating the crossing of the Arctic Circle. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline that made this area open for us, because without the building of that Dalton Highway, we would not have the access we do today. Just guests enjoying the winter. Here is a picture of the fall. So this picture of winter was taken, I believe, in February. This picture of fall was taken the first week of September. We share the road with traffic, so that's part of the story, that it is still an active industrial highway. So we've opened up the area, share with guests the history, the flora, the fauna, but we also then share the road with traffic that's taking supplies still up to Dead Horse and Prudhoe Bay. And this picture here with the vegetation here, this picture was taken in June, so you just see the delicate flowers that are growing on the tundra. And then this picture in the snow was taken in March, north of the Arctic Circle. And then I mentioned we're here year-round. And this is another question that people ask of like, well, if I come in the wintertime, aren't you dark all the time? Well, it is true that we have limited daylight. I have a slide coming up here soon that talks about some of the daylight. But in a lot of ways, that just enhances what your experience is. These particular slides were taken relatively in a couple weeks from each other in February. And so it does show you how the sun doesn't rise very high in the sky, but what it does do is provide a different view, if you will, a different daylight that adds a different mystery to what one is seeing and experiencing. And so it is absolutely not a negative thing traveling in the winter. It is to be understood that we do have shorter days, but that does not take away from the opportunity to get out there and experience it close up. Now we're getting to some of the exciting part that many of you might be thinking about as a Aurora. As I mentioned, we operate year-round, and Alaska's Arctic is open year-round. Officially, we have Alaska's Aurora season from August 21st to April 21st. Yes, it is a misconception that the northern lights are only available to be seen during winter cold months, but they actually occur over 300 days of the year. What you need to have put into place is your guests absolutely need to travel from August 21st to April 21st. That is when our nights are dark enough to see them. So it's really important for them to travel at that time. And travel at that time they can. Putting it together again is a guest can do a daytime tour, and I put quotations on daytime tour because I just mentioned it has to be night. So what they can do is they can combine doing a daytime tour to the Arctic Circle. Again, Arctic Circle Air Adventure, Arctic Circle Drive Adventure, Arctic Circle Fly Drive Adventure. So again, combining the method, how they would like to travel with the budget that they have. And then as they return back to Fairbanks, we keep them out late. We keep them out during the darkest parts of the night to see the northern lights. Or we have our Homestead Aurora. They don't want to combine it with an Arctic Circle tour. They only want to do a nighttime tour. Again, soft adventure. They've got a nice cabin to stay warm in. There's hot water, beverages to stay warm, place to stay warm, but then head on outside to look for the northern lights. But then it comes to that very deep question, why is Alaska's Arctic the premier Aurora destination? Myself and other colleagues on the road in the Fairbanks area, what we really try to share with you, it's not just us doing marketing. You know, you could go look out in the world and there's Iceland, there's Norway, everyone's touting themselves as a great Aurora destination, but it's not us just saying that. The scientists have our back. So here is why we are the premier destination for the Northern Lights. This picture here is of the Aurora Oval. This picture was actually provided by the University of Alaska Fairbanks Geophysical Institute. They do aurora forecasts. So if you've done any research for your clients, you may have already come across this website. They do forecasts. They do what the forecast is for tonight, and then usually for the next 5 days. What they are doing a forecast on, and I'm not going to get into the science of aurora, so just make sure you know that I'm not giving you the pure science, but bottom line, what's happening is there are storms on the sun that shoot out from the sun. They hit our atmosphere, having an electrical storm, and where in our atmosphere that's happening is on this line, this Aurora Oval, as the scientists have called it. This is where the northern lights are going to be the most intense, where the dark green band is. And then this lower green line is how far you may be able to see it, but it's really, you're concentrating on this dark band here. And there is Alaska, and the band cuts through it. Now I mentioned, and then so here is the state of Alaska, and there's Fairbanks. Here's the dark band. Where a lot of our Arctic Circle Aurora overnight adventures go is a place called Coalfoot, which is right about here, right about that S in Bettles is where Coalfoot is located, directly under the Aurora Oval. Now, another feature of why it makes a great destination is to the south of us is the Alaska Range. To the north of us is the Brooks Mountain Range. So if you think about weather, we are actually a very dry area in interior Alaska because we're protected from the south. The rain, storm, and snow falls down here before it crosses the Alaska Range. Same with to the north, any storms coming off the Arctic Ocean coast get stopped by the Brooks Mountain Range, making interior Alaska statistically clearer than other locations. And those other locations are Iceland, which there's the band there going across Iceland, and Norway, and there's the green band off the coast of Iceland. Now what I want to share, or sorry, Norway. I know my geography, off of Norway. What I want to share with you looking close to these pictures, they're fantastic. I've traveled to Norway, I've traveled to Iceland, and I think countries on their own for other reasons are absolutely great to go to. Go to the Scandinavian history and culture, the coastline, Iceland with the volcanoes and the glaciers, absolutely. However, unfortunately, what they have against them as an Aurora destination is their weather. This coastline is going to bring more nights that are overcast than you do have in Alaska. So back to why we are a good location, and again, the science is behind us, is because we, again, are protected from weather to the north, weather to the south, and we have that source of the aurora right above us. Now, no one can guarantee you the northern lights, so you do have to put a few things into place before you travel. And so what you want to make sure you do is make sure that you're traveling between August 21st and April 21st. Those, again, are the nights that are dark enough to see them. You want that sky to be dark. Location, location, location. I'm not going to go back to the other side, but again, that Aurora Oval, you want to get yourself as close as you can to that Aurora Oval. For some, it's going to be hubbing and spoking out of Fairbanks and doing multi-night tours out of Fairbanks to go out looking for the northern lights. Or if they have the time, absolutely, taking a tour up to Coalfoot so that you're directly underneath the source. You do want to get away from the city lights. That's why most Aurora tours are taking you usually about 50 to 60 miles out of Fairbanks to be what's called off the grid, literally away from the city services, providing their own power, so you don't have that light effect from the city, making it harder to see the blackness of the sky. And then we also indicate dedicating at least 3 nights to it. And again, that's us saying it, but that's all the scientists are indicating that one has a 90% chance to see the northern lights if they're in Fairbanks area, if they dedicate 3 nights. They have told us basically any clear night in Coalfoot is a 100% chance during that August 21st to April 21st time frame. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about what does it mean to dedicate a night. This is definitely something hard to understand, but what we do mean is not giving up. Unfortunately, while the scientists have that forecast, they look at the storms and 5 days out, they plug it into an equation to say it's going to be a real active night or a quiet night. What they cannot tell us is at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 10 p.m., 1 a.m., when the lights will occur. They do occur often, not just one time a night. They have been able to do the research and make a tick mark that the most active time is around solar midnight, which is not midnight on the clock, but solar midnight. Right now with daylight savings, it is actually closer to about 1:30 to 2 o'clock in the morning is the middle of their peak. So you can go out right now and it's dark at 10 o'clock at night. Maybe they're out, maybe they're not. But what you can't do, if that's one of your nights that you're dedicating to looking for them, you want to make sure that you stay awake or you're with somebody that you're tagging out, someone staying awake to watch for it. Because 2 things can happen. One, it could be a clear night and just nothing's happening. You want to stay up. You want to be vigilant. You want to keep an eye on it because they can come out at any time. They can last from just a minute or 2 and go away, but they can also last for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and again, come back and forth. Another reason not to give up. Weather is something to look at because weather does happen just because we are protected from the mountains. Yes, we do get some snow. Yes, we get overcast, but weather does change. And so whatever the weather is at 10 p.m. does not mean it's going to be the same weather at 2 a.m. And we have had success from guests who wanted to go home early. They said, why are we still out here? And the weather has changed. So it's really important that you share that with your guests, is that as you're planning out their itinerary, that they want to make sure that somewhere in there they're dedicating their nights that they know that they don't want to schedule a tour at 6 a.m. the next morning, that they want to make sure that they are staying and dedicating most of the night to it. Now, other things I want to talk about with that range, that's a big range, August 21st to April 21st. Well, when's the best time to come in that time frame? That's really not a question that anyone can really solidly answer. As far as the intensity of the lights, there's definitely mixed research out there of when it might be best. Now, some scientists talk about that it's really good around the equinoxes, so September 21st, April 21st, or sorry, March 21st. I got 8, so September 21st or March 21st. Others will talk about February and March being really great times because that's when different universities are here in Alaska and working with the University of Alaska Fairbanks on researching the northern lights. Well, we talked to some of those universities when they passed through. They were saying the reason that they came in February and March is because that's when their spring break is, and that's when they can have students join them for the research, not necessarily because that was the best time to come. So then it really comes down to, what does your client want to do the rest of their time? Northern lights might be their number one reason for coming to Alaska, but are they coming to Alaska and are they travelers that like to take a cruise? Well, then absolutely. You can do a summer-style tour to Alaska, do a cruise, but then plan to either end in Fairbanks after that August 21st date and dedicate 2 or 3 nights to getting out there and looking for the northern lights, or start after that time frame in Fairbanks and then work your way south, or even an independent tour. Come at the end of August, beginning of September. That's when those activities are abundant around Denali National Park. It's open. Hiking trails are open. Fishing is available throughout the state in different locations. And so a person can absolutely do a summer-style tour to Alaska and look for the northern lights as long as it's at the end of August, beginning of September. But other times, people are wanting to do snow activities, winter activities. Well, if they want snow activities, they're going to come at the end of November through beginning of April. Here in Interior, our snow is definitely here through April a little bit. But they also can do things that are around events. In the month of December, fantastic time for Christmas celebrations. If you did not know, just south of Fairbanks is the city of North Pole, which absolutely has Santa Claus House, and they have an ice carving park that's open for the month of December right next to Santa Claus House. And so families, or young or old, that really like to celebrate Christmas can come in December, take in Santa Claus House, take in Christmas and ice, seeing large carvings made out of ice that's quote unquote grown here in Fairbanks that is crystal clear because we get steady cold temperatures. And then, of course, making a visit to Santa Claus House and getting a picture with Santa is a one time frame where families like to travel. Or we have different events. There is an event that doesn't even take place in Fairbanks that people will travel to and join a Fairbanks tour, and that's the Iditarod dog sled race. And so people will either start up here in Fairbanks, do their Aurora viewing, do their ice fishing, do their dog mushing, but they'll finish the first weekend of March down in in first weekend in March, or of course, start in Anchorage and watch the Iditarod and then come up to Fairbanks. I mean, so a number of different reasons like that people will be tracking. This picture here, before I move on, I like to bring your attention to, because one of the things people will look at is, well, I just looked at the calendar and I saw that the dates I'm thinking of traveling, it's a full moon. Well, looking up at this picture up here, here's the northern lights with the full moon. So that's not a reason not to travel. If that's the only time a guest has to travel is a full moon, don't let that stop them. The full moon does not affect the northern lights from taking place. And for some photographers, they really like it because it can actually lighten up the scenery. You know, definitely you'll see a lot of photography out there. Sometimes there'll be a cabin that's lit or just being able to see the trees lit. And that's thanks to having that full moon. So definitely don't let that stop them. Well, since I've been talking a little bit about coming to Alaska and the fears that some people have, I thought I'd throw this slide in here about what the temperature and daylight is. Now, these are the average temperatures. So, of course, for a month, it's looking at the average temperature from the 1st of the month to the 30th of the month. And so it shows you that we're not quite that cold come the summer months. Right now well, I guess we're in March right now. So coming up soon, April will have an average of 41, and May 59, June 70, July 72, August 66. Well, those are our average temperatures. Fairbanks actually does usually have a handful of days that will actually break 90. We also have functionally 24-hour daylight. Now, the daylight that's listed here, 17, 21, 24, and so on, that's from sunrise to sunset. But for all intents purposes, a month on both sides of June 21st, we have functionally 24 hours here. And that sun is up in the sky that whole time because it barely goes below the surface, or it barely goes down. We still have daylight. The sun may not be in the sky, but we still have daylight in that 2-month period of summer. Well, of course, people are focusing now on the winter thinking, oh, it's just too cold for me to go. I'm not going to lie. Yes, by numbers, these numbers are low. And so, yes, we do have low Fahrenheit temperatures, -4 in January. But I want to share with you, it is a dry cold. Does not mean, when I go to the next section of what to wear, does not mean that I'm not dressed for that dry cold, but it's not a damp, wet cold that goes through you. There really is a difference. But then comes the what to wear. And you will hear this no matter if a person is traveling in the summertime or the wintertime, you dress in layers. Because no matter where you're going, the weather is bound to change. We have our shorter Arctic Circle air adventure, a 5-hour trip that takes the guests from Fairbanks north of the Arctic Circle to Coldfoot. So they are north of the Arctic Circle. Well, they may leave here in the middle of the summer and the temperature is 70 degrees. I make sure that you still take a jacket with you, still take your layers, because even if you're doing a tour around Fairbanks for 5 hours, the weather can change. So what to wear as the temperatures do drop here in our cooler months, and you're coming here for looking for the northern lights, we say dress in layers, having an inner layer of thermals, having then a next layer of either a button-down shirt or a t-shirt on top of that, then a sweater, and then your jacket, making sure you do have a hat or something to cover your ears, having a scarf or something for your face. Layers on the bottom are going to be, again, a thermal layer, pants, and if you are here in the deepest of winter, or you are coming from a place that has much warmer temperatures, is then having a layer of snow pants or shells. And then on your feet, it doesn't have to be what we call large bunny boots. There are boots that are large that someone would go out especially and buy. You can have just regular hiking boots. The trick for your feet is making sure that you can still wiggle your toes. So if someone is buying new boots, they would want to make sure, if they're planning to wear a pair of a thin layer and then a wool pair of socks, can I wiggle my toes? They need to make sure that they can wiggle their toes to let the heat circulate. And then a combination of those layers, depending on what the weather is, they're going to wear all those layers or a combination of them, depending on what the temperature is on any given day. So those are some of my common questions that people ask about traveling. Not here because I'm kind of looking at my time. I'm going to talk about a couple other things that get common questions that are asked. I talk about how remote Alaska's Arctic is, but that it is accessible for travelers to get out there in a soft adventure. We take care of the driving. We take care of the flying. We'll get questions about accessibility. If you have clients that are assisted by walkers, they're assisted by canes, they're assisted by wheelchairs, we absolutely invite them to join us, but we invite them to have a conversation, with you, with us, is that the region is still fairly rugged. When we make stops, the stops are on gravel surfaces, or right now in the wintertime, snowpacks that have basically been packed down by other travelers walking on it. And so it is something that we want to have a conversation with guests that they are assisted by a cane or by a walker, of just making sure they take their time, have that steady cane, have that steady walker, Someone who is assisted by a wheelchair, absolutely, we're open for them to join us, but just to be aware of, again, the gravel nature and that outhouses are very common along the way. So we'd want to have that conversation of the assistance that might be needed for someone that has those mobility aids with them. Now, another fantastic source here that before I end and open this up to questions is most visitors aren't just going to come and do a tour up into Alaska's Arctic. That hub area they're going to come into is Fairbanks. And so I cannot recommend highly, or more highly enough, if you will, the services of Explore Fairbanks. They are our local Convention and Visitors Bureau, providing information online at that website I'm giving you. But they also have the Morris Thompson Cultural Visitor Center here in Fairbanks that I would highly recommend that all visitors visit. Not only is it the brochures, so that's of course a common feature of any visitor center, but it also has some fantastic displays. It's free of charge to go in there. It is showing visitors life in interior Alaska through the seasons. And so you walk through the displays, you're walking through spring, summer, fall, winter, and seeing everyday life. So no matter what time of the year a visitor is traveling, they have a chance to experience it in those displays. They also have on their website, they have a couple of fun features that you might find handy for your visitors. And just finishing off on that winter of how to dress, they have a video of how to dress for winter that's kind of fun to take a look at. They also have a forecast to tell you what the forecast of the northern lights are in about 5 different areas here around interior Alaska. They also can show you what the daylight is, and you can plug in a date specific. So if your guest is wondering, well, what's the daylight going to be like August 1st? You can plug that in. And showing this native culture information here, the Morris Thompson Cultural Visitor Center is not just the visitor center, it's a cultural center for a local organization that's sharing the native culture of interior Alaska. And so during the summer months of June, July, and August, your guests can go and they can make and take their own beaded earrings if they want. They can see a youth dance group sharing song and dance from the local Gwich'in Athabascan culture. So great opportunity for your guests to really understand and experience interior Alaska and the native culture of interior Alaska. And with that, Sarah, I'll just kind of share with you, I think I'm at the point now, if anyone has any questions for me, to, I guess, chime in. I'm sharing here with some of the different pictures. Again, I like to share. This picture right down here is taken on December 26th at 11 a.m. It's north of Coalfoot, north of the Arctic Circle. So kind of giving you that idea again of, yes, we have limited daylight, but it's not totally pitch dark year round. You've got a little limit. So go ahead, Sarah. I'm turning it back over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathy. We do have several questions coming in. So again, just as a reminder before I jump into these, if you're on the call and you have a question, go ahead and type it in to that questions pane on your GoToWebinar panel there. So we had some questions about accommodating clients with a disability, which you did touch on, Kathy, so thank you for that. But along those lines of that same question, do you have an average age or type of client that you see that takes these type of trips up to the Arctic Circle?
Good question. As far as age, I'd like to actually first point out that we don't have any age limit on the high end. There is only one tour that has a low end age, and that is that Denali Summit I mentioned. Our guests do need to be at least 10 years of age or older because we do use oxygen on board that flight. All other tours, there is no minimum or maximum age. And as far as what the average age for a lot of these different tours, it does change depending on which tour experience we're talking about. You know, on average, if you take all of the year and all of the tours in the whole, you know, average age is probably in that 55 age, plus or minus. We do tend to see a little bit younger, average probably in the winter months. Summer, a little bit higher. I think the oldest guest that we had was, at least they admitted how old they were. There's a gentleman that was 91 years old, and it was actually on a winter tour. It's about 3 years ago. So, you know, what I'd like to say is that really we're open to anybody, you know, to join us. And, you know, because we did talk about that mobility. It does just take a conversation so that no one is shocked when they get here, is that, you know, we are a modern lifestyle up here, but we do live in a wilderness area. So you have to you know, change your method around a little bit sometimes to get access to it. But if you want to go, we want to make it happen.
Great. Awesome. And do you offer all-inclusive plans for these trips? How does this work?
Good question. We don't. With our tour experience, meals are not included with any of them. So that includes both the shorter 5-hour tour experiences, but also the multi-day experiences. We have definitely, we'll take a look at it sometimes, but have made the choice that meals are not included. Guests are more than welcome to bring their own food, or know that, of course, there is option for them to purchase. If it's a day tour that they need to order lunch or dinner, they can, or the overnight tours that we offer at the accommodations, they can get whichever meals they want. Partly because there's definitely a range of, you know, what a person might want to eat. If they're just for breakfast more of a cereal or a toast person, or if they really want the trucker's omelet, that this way they can, you know, guests can control their cost depending on what they want. So we don't have meals included.
Okay. And how long would you recommend for someone to take a trip up to this area? I know it might vary depending on the season and what they're looking to see, but is there an average length of a trip?
Exactly. That is the hard part, depending on what their main goal. Of course, I just finished with the Northern Lights. Of course, if that was what a person's going for, well, of course, their time in Fairbanks should be much longer because of dedicating those nights to the Aurora. In general, the rest of the time of the year, they're probably going to spend 2, if not 3 nights in Fairbanks, which does allow them to do, again, talking about the Arctic, you know, one of those days could be a complete 100% Arctic experience, whether it be the going by flight and ground tour, be it going into one of the native communities, or even an overnight, still allowing them time to see and experience things in Fairbanks. And so, you know, for just the Fairbanks portion could be those 2 or 3 nights with an overall average 7-day trip to a general area. I don't usually recommend 7 days covering all of Alaska because we're just too big for that.
Yeah. Okay. Do you guys offer any cultural, shopping, or culinary tours?
We do not.
Any other?
On that part. Now, with the shopping portion, is what I would share is, you know, no, we don't have any specific shopping. It is minimal, if you will. One, I could definitely highly recommend, again, back to the Morris Thompson Culture Visitor Center, because they do have items there for sale that are from the local native culture. With trips that we take to Utqiagvik, formerly known as Barrow, or going to Anaktuvik Pass, there are options there to purchase local crafts, and so that would be a thing. But it's very important that neither one of those two experiences is created, and it's not an experience where people are meeting and greeting you at the plane when you land, but there is opportunity for items on display and available for sale at both of those locations.
Okay. And then one of the last questions, I know you mentioned that you do offer the opportunities to go into more of the local cultures. Could you just touch a little more on that, on those tour opportunities? I've had a few questions about that, about connecting with the indigenous Alaskans.
Absolutely. And so one part of it, going back to our philosophy of sharing, is that, one, we want it absolutely to be authentic for guest sharing. And we felt it was really important that when we did expand and start going into communities, that it was not us as Northern Alaska Tour Company telling the story of any community we go into. So the communities that we go into, it's because we were, it sounds a little bit funny, invited, if you will. Others, you can just go into the community, but we actually were working with somebody who absolutely said, yes, we want visitation to happen. And it's working with that local host in that community. They're the ones that's going to provide the tour experience. And so some of the ones that have a little bit more developed, if you will, experiences would be either Fort Yukon, which is that Gwich'in Athabascan community on the Yukon River. The experience there is we fly in the evening to Fort Yukon, and this community is quite spread out. So it's actually a bus tour through the community, which is one of the experiences if someone has mobility, works out well because they can sit on the bus and still get through the community fine. And the local host has his own humor, and he just chuckles along and shares guests information, and he will make a stop at the Yukon River that guests can then ask him questions from what he shared. And he's a long time, that's his hometown and generations there, and had that opportunity. Hands down, you'll not hear me talk about created experience because there's no song and dance. No one is meeting the vehicles or any of these tour experiences in, traditional dress. They are in present day dress of how they live in a modern day society, but they have the rich culture. So in that tour of Fort Yukon, that's what Richard Carroll is sharing. When we go up to Nunavut Pass and the gate to the Arctic National Park, that is Nunavut Eskimo culture. And here we like to talk, it's a stroll through the community. So there again, the local host meets the plane, and we spend an hour on the ground walking through the community. The host is pointing out different features of the community and walking up to a nice vista to look around the valley. And absolutely, they are expecting our guests, they're sharing with the guests, but we strongly encourage that our guests are interactive with the host and asking questions. They might point out, there's my high school, they might not say anything more, that guests are encouraged to ask questions to make it a two-way conversation with the host. Barrow, Utqiagvik, is also a town spread out of 4,000 people, and again, modern society. There's a bus system there. There are stop signs, no stoplights yet, but during the tour, their host is taking them through the residential and commercial areas of Utqiagvik, pointing out features, taking them to the Arctic Ocean, and again, it's modern day life, but with a rich culture. And that's what really stands out with our experiences, that they are the real communities of 2018, as we enter the year of 2018, but they have the culture past to share with you of what some of their traditions are, that their family has passed down, they're fishing, they're hunting, but again, in a modern society of owning cell phones, having television, having internet, and just having that modern day life. For those that are looking for the shared experience, there's some fantastic, like I say, the cultural sharing that's done at the Morris Thompson Culture Visitor Center. In Anchorage, there's the Alaska Native Heritage Center that brings them together into that cultural sharing. But if you getting out to the real communities is what our experiences are to Nunavut Pass, Utqiagvik, Fort Yukon, or Beaver, I mentioned as well, that's on the Yukon River. So hopefully that kind of answered some of the questions of how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last question I'm going to ask today, Kathy, is do you offer any FAM options for any of our members to come out and experience your tours?
The answer is yes, but not in the complete sense, in the sense of bringing you from your home. But yeah, we are absolutely open for you to contact us if you have made it to Fairbanks to work with you when you're here on an experience. Yes.
Wonderful.
Well, I guess to share one, there was one tour I did not say anything about, but of course I know that you're all capable of looking at our website. There's one tour I did not talk about, and that is our polar bear expedition. Yes, we do have a tour that goes out and looks for polar bears for a very small window at the end of August through September. Do want to share with you, we absolutely are open and we work with our travel agents, but that is one tour that we have that is not commissionable due to the unfortunately high nature of costs and low margin there. That would be one that we would not be able to work with there, but all the rest of them, absolutely.
Great. Okay. Thanks so much. Thank you, Kathy, and for all this information. This is a wonderful webinar. As I mentioned, today's webinar was being recorded, so if you'd like to listen to it again or share it with any of your colleagues, it will be available on NACTA's YouTube page. Thank you again to Kathy and our partners at Northern Alaska Tour Company, as well as everyone who's joined us for today's webinar. This will conclude today's presentation, and we hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. Thank you, Kathy.
All right, thank you, Sarah.